like to thank the Georgia State African American Chamber of Commerce for allowing us to be their Business of the Month and for coming and visit to find out exactly what we do here in Albany. My name is A.E. Jenkins. I'm owner and operator of A.E. Jenkins Photography. We've been in business since 1983. We're a second generation photography company in that we took over from the prestigious B&F Cochran some 34 years ago, who started this business actually back in 1946. So between himself and myself, this business has existed for probably over 70 plus years here in the Albany area. And matter of fact, basically in this exact same location down in what's known as the Harlem Business District of Albany. Primarily what we do is what he was well noted for over the years: families and babies, weddings. We do a lot of seniors and school photography. But probably our main thing that we're more noted for are our executive type portraits and our family photography. It's been a great number of years that I've had it, and I've enjoyed it. I didn't actually think that this would be what I would be doing all these years. Actually, when I went to college and started out, my intent was to be a middle school music teacher. I was a lover of jazz. I was in band and loved and excelled in my music. And so when I was attending Albany State, that was basically what my intent was. However, back in junior high school, I was assigned the task of taking photographs for a middle school newspaper called the Tiger Year back then. And nobody could get the Polaroid camera to work. So because I knew Mr. Cochran, my parents were both educators, as well as Mr. Cochran and his wife. So that put me in the arena of being around him quite often. And so I asked him, well, let me take the camera and let me just see if I can ask him how to work it. And I did, and he was gracious enough to show me. And from that point on, I was designated the school photographer because I was the only one who could get the Polaroid to work. And it was the old Polaroid. For those who might be old school to remember, it was the kind you pull out and then you have to kind of flap it around and wait 60 seconds, then peel it off, not like all this modern stuff today. But that was pretty much the beginning. But even then, I still didn't realize at that point that this would be what I would do for the rest of my life. I still thought music was it, so I was juggling the two. I went on to high school and became a part of the annual staff, and in doing that, that gave me a fairly good, well-rounded start photographing my high school friends. And matter of fact, to this day, and this year, we'll be celebrating our 40th high school reunion. A lot of those friends still have those same photographs we did back in high school. So it'll be fun to see some of them and some of them bringing back those old photographs to remember those times. But once I finished high school, I went on over to Albany State, and that's really where I got my foundation in photography. A gentleman by the name of John Holly, who was the public relations director there, ended up giving me a job working for the school. In doing that, that really put me in an arena of all types of photography, from sports to journalism, you name it, we were doing it. And that kind of gave me that ability to really hone in on exactly what I thought that I would be doing later on in years. Later on, Mr. Cochran, started talking to him, and one of the things that he was really avid about was education in photography. Nowadays a lot of folks just pick up a camera and just start pressing the button and shooting, and whatever the camera does, they think that's a great success. But back then there were no automations, there was nothing automatic, no autofocus, no auto exposure, you name it, everything was manual. So you had to set it, you had to know how to set it and what you were going to get based on those settings. So for that, I decided I would continue on my education. Albany State did not have a pure photography program, so I then ventured off to Atlanta to Art Institute, where I really got an eye-opener here in small town Albany, working with Mr. Cochran. And back then, not a lot of people was into photography. That would have been a major luxury of someone who could afford to be able to purchase those types of cameras and do photography at that point. Nowadays, you can pick up your cell phone and do a lot of magic with it. So I thought that I was the greatest photographer in the world at that point until I got to Atlanta at Art Institute, which really gave me an eye-opener because I was among a lot of young, some younger, some a little bit older, but people who were just, really, really good at what they were doing in the way of photography. And that then made me decide to get really serious about it. And I think at that point, that's probably when I decided that no doubt this was what I wanted to do. But then I came back home to Albany and really decided I wanted to get serious about it. So I was traveling back and forth, school, and kind of helping to run the studio. Unfortunately, Mr. Cochran became ill. And so then it was a must that I come back on weekends in order to keep things going. And finally, I finished Art Institute and decided I would move back. But in moving back, I stopped in Americas at Georgia Southwestern because they had a more solid professional photography program with their program. And so I then came back, was doing that, ended up working at a couple of radio stations TV stations along the way. Channel 10 for one, then of course what we knew back then as WTSG, which was 31, which is our Fox station here in Albany now. And I worked there for several years, helping to do all types of things in the way of videography, commercials, did a couple of church productions, some of the well-noted churches here in Albany. And that gave me another perspective that I've been able to build on now that video all of a sudden is a major part of a regular studio when it comes to weddings and documentation of things like that. But once Mr. Cochran decided that he didn't want to continue, he wanted to retire, I then stepped in and took over, and that was about 1983, and I've been here ever since. I did think that though I would probably not end up in Albany doing photography. I really thought that I was going to go north because I was really more interested in commercial at the time. But as it be, I'm here in Albany, and I'm really blessed, and I've really had a great career. And I love what I do. The fact now that I can look back over some 2 or 3 generations that are now starting to come back. Kids that I did as babies now have kids who are having babies and they're coming back, and that's a great feeling. I wouldn't take anything from that. And again, I just appreciate you listening to me, hearing us, and please support us. We need all your help, and we hope that we'll see you next in the spotlight.